The stadium was roaring, hundreds of families cheering, crying, waving signs, yet one seat in the far back row remained completely silent. A man in a faded janitor's uniform stood there, cap pulled low, hands trembling as he gripped the strap of his old backpack. No one noticed him. No one ever did. But the moment a Navy captain stepped onto the stage to hand out diplomas, her eyes locked onto the quiet janitor in the audience, then froze. Her face went white. And before she could stop herself, tears spilled down her cheeks. Because beneath the janitor's sleeve, just barely visible when he clapped, was a tattoo she hadn't seen in nearly 18 years. A tattoo that belonged to a brotherhood she thought she had lost forever. And that silent janitor, the man everyone overlooked, was the reason she was still alive. And he had no idea she was there. No one at Lincoln High School knew much about Daniel Reyes. To students he was Mr. Reyes, the quiet janitor who worked nights and early mornings, always mopping floors before the first bell rang. He never complained, never raised his voice, never stopped to chat unless spoken to. Most teachers assumed he was just another humble staff member trying to get by. But his son Mateo, top of the graduating class, knew the truth. His father wasn't quiet because he had nothing to say. He was quiet because the world had taken too much from him already. For 18 years, Daniel had worked 3 jobs: janitor at night, mechanic on weekends, and short contract labor whenever he could. He cooked simple meals, fixed Mateo's worn-down shoes, and sat with him every night until homework was finished. And though the boy often asked why his father never invited friends over, never talked about his past, never celebrated his own birthday, Daniel always gave the same tired smile. "Son, some stories are too heavy. I'd rather carry them alone." But today wasn't about the weight he carried. Today was about Mateo, the boy who made every sacrifice worth it. Daniel arrived early to the graduation ceremony, parking 2 blocks away so no one would see him step out of his old pickup with a mismatched door. His uniform wasn't meant for crowds, and though he wanted to dress better, he couldn't afford anything new. He had convinced himself it didn't matter. He was only there to watch from the back, to slip out quietly after Mateo got his diploma. He didn't want to embarrass his son with his shabby clothes or oil-stained boots. But as he walked toward the gates, he noticed families in crisp suits, mothers holding flowers, fathers taking photos proudly. He slowed. For a moment, he considered turning around. But then he saw Mateo on the field, laughing with friends, cap tilted to the side, eyes scanning the crowd, looking for him. And suddenly, nothing else mattered. Daniel hurried inside and found the back row where no one would pay attention to him. From there, he could see everything: the stage, the students, the smiling teachers. His heart pounded. He had spent years imagining this moment, his son finally stepping into a future brighter than anything he himself had ever known. But the moment the Navy captain walked across the stage to join the principal, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Captain Amelia Hart. He recognized her immediately. She hadn't changed much: clean-cut golden hair, squared shoulders, sharp focus in her eyes. She walked like someone used to giving orders, used to people listening. A hero to everyone in the stadium. But to Daniel, she was a ghost from a life he no longer spoke of. He sank deeper into his seat and tugged his sleeve down. He didn't want to be recognized. Not today. Not ever. Still, he couldn't keep his eyes from drifting back to her. The memories he buried for almost 20 years pushed up like flames, screams, fire, water rushing in, holding a line no one could possibly hold. The night he thought he was going to die. The night he made a promise to himself: if he survived, he would raise his son differently, quietly, safely, far from the world that broke men faster than it made heroes. He forced the memories down. This was Mateo's day. The announcer called out the first few names. Families cheered. Cameras flashed. Daniel clapped softly, careful not to draw attention, yet the moment he lifted his hands, Captain Hart's head snapped upward. Her eyes narrowed. She scanned the crowd. Again. Again. Then she froze. Her hand flew to her mouth. Daniel followed her gaze, straight to him. He felt the stadium spinning. No. No, she can't recognize me. Not after all these years. But she had. Even from the stage, tears were already forming in her eyes. And Daniel knew, there was no hiding anymore. Captain Amelia Hart couldn't breathe. For the entire ceremony, she had stood tall, smiling, shaking hands with administrators. But the moment she saw the tattoo peeking from the janitor's sleeve, the tattoo of their old CO rescue unit, her composure shattered. That tattoo belonged to exactly 5 people in the world. 4 of them were dead. And one had vanished after the ambush in the Straits. One had saved her life when she lay bleeding under collapsed decking, trapped between fire and freezing water. One had dragged her up by her vest and screamed, "You're not dying today, Captain! Not on my watch!" She had never forgotten that voice. She looked again toward the back row. It was him. Daniel Reyes. The man who disappeared into thin air the moment the Navy declared their unit dissolved. The man she searched for, wrote letters for, asked commanders about, until she was told gently, "Some men don't want to be found." Her throat tightened as she tried to focus on the present. Graduates were walking by, shaking hands, celebrating. She handed out diplomas automatically, but her eyes drifted back to the silent figure in the back row again and again. Every time, her heart cracked open a little more. Why was he standing alone? Why was he wearing a janitor's uniform? Why wouldn't he come closer? When Mateo Reyes's name was called, the stadium erupted in loud cheers. The boy strode confidently across the stage, top honors, scholarship winner, student council leader. Amelia smiled warmly at him, unaware at first. Until she saw the name printed on the diploma. Reyes. Her breath hitched. She looked up at the boy's face, young, bright, hopeful. Daniel's son. The war hero who had vanished had been raising this boy alone. Quietly. Humbly. In pain no one around him even sensed. As Mateo crossed the stage, she handed him the diploma with trembling fingers. "Your father must be very proud," she whispered. Mateo beamed. "He is. He's right over there, in the back. He didn't want to bother anyone." Her heart broke completely. The moment Mateo stepped off the stage, Amelia didn't wait another second. She ignored protocol, ignored cameras, ignored administrators calling after her. She descended the stairs and walked, then jogged, then nearly ran toward the back row. Students and parents turned, confused. Cameras followed her. A hush fell slowly over the crowd as the Navy captain pushed through the rows. Daniel stood slowly as she approached, his face pale, jaw tight, eyes filled with the same quiet pain she remembered. "Daniel," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "Captain Hart, please. Not today. It's my son's moment." But she stepped closer, voice trembling. "I thought you were dead." He looked away. "Sometimes it was easier to pretend I was." She inhaled shakily. "You saved my life." Daniel's jaw clenched. "And I would again. But I'm not that man anymore." "And yet," she said, choking on emotion, "you are standing here, alive, raising an incredible son, working in silence, while the world has no idea who you really are." Students began turning. Teachers whispered. Mateo approached slowly, confusion on his face. "Dad, what's going on?" Daniel swallowed, unable to speak. His son had never heard a word about his military past. He had shielded the boy from everything, even the truth about who he once was. Amelia wiped a tear and straightened her shoulders. "Mateo," she said gently, "your father is a hero. Not just to you. Not just to this school. But to me. To the Navy. To the men and women who never made it home. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here." The entire stadium went silent. Daniel felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't felt since the war. But as he looked at his son's wide, stunned eyes, something inside him softened. Mateo stepped closer. "Dad, you never told me," Daniel whispered. "I didn't want that world to touch you. Tears rolled down Mateo's cheeks, and he wrapped his arms around his father tightly in front of the entire stadium. Students cheered. Parents stood. Cameras flashed. And Daniel, quiet, unseen, forgotten Daniel, stood there shaking as his son held him. Captain Hart placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to hide anymore. Not from him. Not from yourself. For the first time in 18 years, Daniel felt something he didn't think he'd feel again. Lightness. Hope. Maybe even forgiveness. The stadium roared, but he heard only his son's voice. Dad, I'm proud of you. More than anything. Daniel closed his eyes and let the world see him.